Hey, it's Max here, and in this tutorial I will show you how you can connect ManyChat with Integromat to make your flows smarter, and also so that you can connect ManyChat with potentially hundreds of other tools without any programming knowledge. I think this is going to be really cool. I also prepared some really cool examples. So before we're going to dive in, I just want to let you know that everything I'm about to show you, you will also find in the description below. And I also created a really cool Integromat cheat sheet to help you get started with Integromat in case you're totally new to this. So let's just dive right in. So first of all, what is Integromat? So Integromat is an online automation platform that allows you to create and automate workflows with hundreds of apps. And you can build those automation workflows in a visual builder that they call a scenario. And in each scenario, you have modules that you can use to add integrations. So this is a simple example of a scenario. So this scenario has two modules. So this is a webhook module. So as soon as this webhook gets data from ManyChat, we'll show you how to do that in a bit, then this scenario will start. And then in this case, it will trigger the Slack module, which will create a new message. So I will show you how this one works in a bit. So now, why should you use this at all? Now, I think this is really exciting stuff because you can basically unlock a world of possibilities by integrating with a bunch of other apps with ManyChat that maybe don't have this native integration yet. So you can basically create your own experiences. So then how do you connect ManyChat with Integromat? So let me show you how to do that. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go over to scenarios and we want to click create a new scenario. Now then the first thing that it will ask you is which services do you want to integrate? Now I usually just skip this step. So I click here skip and then I can just set up the modules one by one. So the first thing that you need to do when you want to send data over from ManyChat to Integromat is that you're going to have a webhook module. So then you click here custom webhook. And then what you want to do is you want to create a new webhook or select an existing one if you already have one. So then I start with ManyChat so that I know where this data is coming from. And then I call it just an awesome example. And then I'm going to click save. And then you see here that we get our webhook URL. So this is the URL that we want to send data over from ManyChat. So you have to copy this. And then you see here that Integromat is basically waiting for you to send something. So here it says stop. So what it's basically doing, it is determining what kind of data you are going to send so that it knows how to use that in the next few modules. So copy the URL and then we're going over to our flows and then you click create new flow. And then I'm going to call this example triggering Integromat. Then we have a new flow. And then what I want to do here is I want to ask for an email address. What is your best email address? So I'm using a user input for this, right? And I set the reply type to email so that Messenger also know what kind of data we want from that subscriber. And then after someone gives their email address, then this is going to automatically continue. And then we want to continue to another step. And then we want to add an action. And inside this action, we are going to basically trigger the scenario inside Integromat. So what you can do is you can use the trigger Integromat module that is basically already in here, which just allows you to paste your webhook in there. But I'm not a big fan of this because you cannot set any other settings in here. So what I recommend you to do is to use the external request. So an external request is just used to send a request to an external tool. In this case, that is Integromat. And then we paste this into the request URL field over here. Now headers we leave empty because headers are usually used for authentication. So in this case, we're not going to need that. Then the body is, okay, what is the data that we want to send over? The response is what kind of data are we going to get back from Integromat, and a response mapping is what do we do with that data that we get back from Integromat. Now, so inside your body, you can do two things. The simplest one is to add the full subscriber data, which will basically just send all the data from your subscriber. So you can either do that or you can write really simple JSON. So to do that, you start with a curly bracket like this. then a quote mark, and then I would, for example, here start with first name, and then here a colon, and then another quote, and then we're going to add a variable here, first name, and then it's really important that you uncheck this box, because otherwise you're going to get errors. And then we close it off with another quote, and then we want to do a comma to go to the next row, and then we say here last name, quote, colon, quote, and then we're going to add variable again. Then we say here last name, we uncheck this box, then we have a quote, a comma, and then we want to add email, and then we add the email system field variable, here email, then also uncheck that again, then a quote mark, and then in the last row, no comma, because otherwise you're also going to get errors. And that is basically how you write really simple JSON. So again, I'm not a programmer, but I think this is pretty easy to understand. You have your opening curly bracket, your closing curly bracket, then you have the key of the value you want to send over. So quote, then the name of your value basically, quote, colon, quote, then your variable, quote, comma. So that is basically that. So imagine we want to send this over to Integromat, right? So then we click test the request, and then you see that it says 200, okay. And then response body that we got back is that it was accepted. And then when we go over here, you see that stop thing is gone, and then it says successfully determined. So Integromat knows what kind of data it can expect. Then we click OK, and then we're going to create another module. Now what I want to do is I want to add this person to ActiveCampaign. So I'm using ActiveCampaign, but you could, for example, also use MailChimp or ConvertKit. There's really hundreds of tools in here, so just go through it. Yeah, lots of cool possibilities there. So here I say ActiveCampaign, and then I say here create or update a contact. And then what you can do is you just click these fields, and then you get like a little model window over here. And then you see that we get the variables that we got from the webhook module. So here we send over first name, last name, email address, right? And then you see here first name, last name, email address. So here I'm going to add email, first name, and then here the last name, and then the phone number I will leave empty because I don't use this in my business, but you obviously can also add that to it if you want to. Then I'm going to click OK, then I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to click run once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click save, I'm going to hit publish, and then I'm going to preview this flow, and then you see here that it's asking for what is your best email address. Now then I say here Sienna Doe 1999 at maxvancollenburg.com, for example. Then we go quickly back over here, and then you see basically in real time what is happening with our data. So here you see, okay, this went well. We got the data. This is the data that we got, Max van Collenburg, and here the email address. And then you see here that we got an error. So it's really important that you always click at run once, that you test what is really happening. Because in this case, I chose the wrong connection. So then I go down here and I select the connection that I wanted to select. I'm going to click OK, and then I click save again, then I click run once, and then I'm going back over here, and I'm going to preview this one more time just to see what happens. Now, then I say Johanna Doe at maxvancollenburg.com, and then we go back over here quickly, and then you see boom, boom, then you see here that it was successful. So this is the data that we got, and this is what ActiveCampaign did with it. So they created a new contact with this email address, the last name, first name, and then this is the contact ID. I'll also show you a bit more about that in a bit. And then if you want, you can create a filter. So filters are handy if you want to filter some kind of steps. So let's say here we have our webhook, and I only want to add people to ActiveCampaign who are not me, basically, because I'm often testing things inside ManyChat and I do not want to have lots of duplicate contacts in here. That's basically just myself. So what you can do is you can click this link, and then you can set up a filter. So then I say here is not Max, and then I'm going to say here email does not contain, and is also case insensitive. And then I'm just going to type my domain basically over here. Then I'm going to click OK, click save, going to click run once again because I want to test it, make sure it's really working right. And then over here, and then I'm going to say Timothy Doe 1980 at maxcollenburg.com. Then we go quickly back over here. And then you see what is happening. So we got the data, but then the filter basically stopped it from going to the ActiveCampaign module. So the contact was not added over here. So here you can say, so that email address contained maxcollenburg.com, so we did not continue. And this can really be handy for lots of things. I'll also show you some examples of that in a bit. But this is basically how you connect ManyChat with Integromat. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you some really cool examples that are all slightly different so that you really learn some more skills of how you can really leverage this in your business. So the first thing that I want to show you is how you can maybe do a Slack notification. So imagine we have a flow, and inside our flow, someone is going to ask for a question. It can happen, right? It can also be maybe in your default reply or in some kind of flow. So this is how we do that. So here I have a user input. So I say, hey, how can I help? And then we set the reply type to text. And then after someone replied to that, so here waiting for a reply from the user, then it will continue. And then it says, I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And then also the moment that they answered this, then you see our action on a reply. We connected an action with this, is that we started this scenario that I showed you also earlier. So what we do here, we have our webhook module. So you copy the webhook. Then we have our external request. I'm going to paste this in here, and I see that I already have it in here. Headers I left empty. And then in the body, I wrote some really simple JSON. So here you see that the message is Max von Collenburg, user ID, asked a question in ManyChat. And then you see the last thing that they typed. So if I'm going to publish this, I'm going to preview this. And then here I will click run once. Then I will say here, how can I grow tomatoes? And then we go back over here. And then you see here, a second later, it's going into Slack. So this is the data that we got. Max von Collenburg, and then the user ID. I find that handy so that I really know who it is in case you have two people with the same name. Asked a question in ManyChat, how can I grow tomatoes? And then we go over to our Slack module. Now, then you see that the message was posted to the channel. It says Max von Collenburg, user ID, asked a question in ManyChat, how can I grow tomatoes? Now, we did that like this. So we got our data. Then here I selected my connection. Then the channel I want to post it to. So I, for example, also have one for sales. And then I want to use this for support. And then I will just post that message in there. And that is basically that. So that's how you can set that up. I think there's a pretty cool use case in case you do not want to be completely dependent on the live chat, which I think sometimes does not work super great to organize your messages. Now, the second possibility that I want to show you is how you can send basically a personal automated email with Gmail. So we have a flow and we have a scenario. So our flow looks like this. So we basically have a little lesson here, maybe a part of a free course. So then we say here, hey Max, are you ready for today's lesson? And then as soon as someone clicks yes, show me, then I get a message that says, watch the video below by clicking the button. Now, then I get here an image, maybe a preview of the video, and then I can click the button to maybe go to my website where I hosted the video. And then we automatically continue to the external request, which is going to send an email. Now, one thing I want to mention here is that it is important that you, after this block, in this case, that you set it to continue to another step and that you do not connect this to the action, because then every time someone is clicking the button, maybe someone clicks the button 3 times, then every time it's going to send an email. So think well about how you want to connect that. So in this case, they just get this message once, and then we continue to the next step, which is going to start this scenario. So we have our webhook. So let's copy the webhook already. Going to click OK, and then we're going to wait for 5 minutes. Because I know, okay, people are going to get the video, they will watch the video. I do not want to send a message the second after they go to that page. I want to wait for 5 minutes. So to do that, I have a sleep module. So you can find it under here. It's just like a native module inside Integromat. And then you click here, sleep. And then you can set it to how long you want to wait. So the maximum of this is 300. The minimum is 1. So 300 seconds is 5 minutes. So then it's going to wait. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I will quickly change this to 5 seconds. And then we're going to click OK. And then we have our Gmail module. And then you see here that I connected my email address. So I'm a G Suite user, so I can just use my own email address in there. And then we can say from who the message is. So you have to type your name between these quote marks and then your email address. They also explain that over here. It also works with only the email address, but I like that people see my name. And then who do you want to send it to? The subject, and then the content of what you want to send. And then if you want, you can even add attachments in there. So that's pretty cool. So how does that work? So we have our external request over here. So we copy this webhook over here, then we paste it in here, then we're sure that it's the right one. Headers, again, we leave empty. Then we have our body, and then inside our body, we add the email. So you see here, email between these curly brackets, colon, and then the email system field variable. Then the subject of the email that we want to send, any feedback max. And then we have the body. And if you do it like this, you can also use this in different flows, right? You can just reuse this because you can always add the email, you can change the subject, and you can change the body. So this is written in HTML, but it's super simple. It's super simple. Again, I'm not a programmer, but you just do this. So you open a paragraph, and then you have your text here, you close it, and then you close it like this. And you basically do that for each sentence. So I like to write it like this. So then they say here, a second row of text, and then I close it again, and then I just combine it all, and then I paste it between these quotes over here. So what I want to do is I want to click save here. I want to click publish, and then I'm going to preview this. And over here, we're going to click here, run once. So then it says here, hey Max, are you ready for today's lesson? And then I say here, yes, show me. And then it says, watch the video below by clicking the button. And then you see when I go back over here, the external request already got the data. The wait module is waiting for 5 seconds in this case, and then it continues and it sent the email. So this is the data that we got. So we have the email address that I gave earlier, any feedback max, that is the subject, and then the body is, hey Max, I noticed that you just watched the 3rd lesson in Messenger. What do you think so far? Now, and then I close off with my name. So then here, now it just waited for 5 seconds. And then here in the Gmail module, you see here that it was this from Max van Kollenburg, hello@maxkollenburg.com. And then the content is, hey Max, I noticed that you just watched the 3rd lesson, etc., etc. Subject is any feedback max. So it was successfully sent. So I really like to use this, not too often, but just here and there to make my whole funnel seem a bit more personal, because I would really like to send all these emails manually by hand. But I just don't have the time for that. But I just want people to know that they can reply to my emails, right? So that's why I do that over here. So I find that pretty cool. So that's how you do that. And then the next one that I want to show you is how you can add contacts to your email list. So for this, we're going to do slightly different. So instead of a flow, we're going to use a rule inside ManyChat and also a scenario. So this is what our scenario looks like. We have our webhook, which I, by the way, renamed to external request. So you can do that by clicking here on the right. And I just named it external request so that I know, this is coming from ManyChat. And then we have our ActiveCampaign module. So here I have email, first name, last name, phone number. And then we also have a webhook response. So I did not show you this right? This is new. So we get data from ManyChat, we add the contact to ActiveCampaign, and we send a response back to ManyChat with some data. Now, what do we send back after we created a new contact? We're going to send back the ActiveCampaign ID. So this is again JSON. So you just start with your curly bracket, you close with your curly bracket, and then in between you just write your things like I did over here. So in this case, I have ActiveCampaign ID, and then I added the ID of that contact that was just created. So here you see this ActiveCampaign module is bouncing. So this is data from that module. I selected this over here. So some cases that is handy. Again, you do not have to do this. I just want to show you how the response works. But then I can store the ActiveCampaign ID inside a custom field inside ManyChat. So let me show you how that works. So what we have here, we have a rule, so not a flow. And this rule basically works like this. So when this happens, so when the system field value changed, email has changed to any value, then we perform these actions any number of times. And then you can add your actions in there. So when the email system field changes to any value, then we trigger an external request, which will start a webhook. So let's copy this, we paste it in there. And then here we have our headers. Now we leave it empty. And then we have here our body. So in this case, just to show you that this is also possible, we have full subscriber data. So we just send everything over to the scenario. Then we add that inside here. So here you see email, first name, last name, phone number, and then we send that response back, right? So let me show you how this works. So here I say, okay, run once. And then I'm going to preview this. So then you see here that we get a response back that says active campaign ID is 26. So this is the 26th contact that was created in Active Campaign. Here you see ID is 26. So I like to save that number into a custom field. So I created a custom field, which is a number custom field called Active Campaign ID. And as you see here, it is a number custom field, or I should actually say user field. And then slightly more complicated, we have to write the JSON path, but it's really simple. So you just have a $, dot, and then here the name of the thing that you want to store. So here active campaign underscore ID. So I would just paste it in there, make sure there's no space, and then select custom field, and then we click save, save again. So then now, when you capture an email address in any flows of your Facebook Messenger bot, then boom, they're automatically being added to Active Campaign because we triggered this scenario as soon as the email system field changed. So I really like to use this method, especially if you are asking for an email address multiple times, then you do not have to add this to your flows multiple times. Now, then the fourth possibility, slightly more advanced, but also pretty cool, is that we're going to check the Google Calendar. So imagine you do maybe some kind of coaching calls or reservations or whatever, then maybe you want to check inside your Google Calendar if you have time for that person then and then. So this is how that works. So we send a message that says, hey Max, and then we just say, pick a date and time. And this again is a user input, but we set the reply type of this user input to a date and time. And then we save that response to a custom field. So this custom field is just a custom field that I named date and time. And then the text on the button, because with this reply type, we're going to get a button. And then here I say select date and time. And then we also have a skip button in case they do not want to select a date and time. So this is what that looks like. Let me show you how that works. So here I say preview. I'm going over here and then it says here, hey Max, pick a date and time. And then you see here that we have select date and time and also the cancel button. And after that, so we wait for a reply from the user and then we automatically continue to a next step. So we continue to a condition. And inside this condition, we check if the date and time custom field has any value. Now, why do we do that? Because it only continues after a reply from the user, right? Now, that is because of that cancel button. So if someone clicks cancel, you do not want to check your Google Calendar because they already said that they want to cancel their reservation or whatever it is. So if it does not have any value, then we just know that they canceled and then we say, ok, no worries. But if it has any value, what we do then is obviously we're going to trigger a webhook. So we have this webhook over here. So this is our scenario. So we have this, we copy that, go over here, you paste it in there, headers empty. And then in the body here, I just used the full subscriber data. So again, if you're not super confident with writing JSON, you just use this method. If you're just a bit more confident with how you write that, then use the other method that I showed you. But in this case, I will send the full subscriber data because then it's just going to send everything. And then we have response and then also response mapping. So response mapping is going to save the status because in this scenario, we start a scenario, then we're going to search for events at the date and time that that person picked. And then after that, we have a router. So a router is just a native module inside Integromat, which basically allows you to split a scenario. So you can just either have multiple paths at the same time, or you can set up here filters like I did. And then if I'm available at this time, then we go here and then we create a new event. And after we create a new event, we send back a webhook response. So we write super simple JSON again. So here we have our open bracket, closing bracket, status is available. And then you see in here that it says status unavailable. So let me preview this and I can show you how each step works. So I'm going to click save here over again. I'm going to click publish. I'm going to click preview. And then over here it says, hey Max, pick a date and time. Then select a date and time. Now let's say that I'm going to pick Friday at 12. So here, Friday at 12. And then you see over here, boom, just in a few seconds, maybe 2 seconds, this already triggered. And then we get a message back that says, perfect, that date and time is still available. Now, how does that work? So this is the data that we get from ManyChat. So all the data basically, including the custom fields. So here you see our date and time custom field. And then we got the date and the time that I just picked here in Messenger. Now then in the next step, so this is search events. So this is a search events module for Google Calendar. So when you create a new module, you just go over here where you type it. And then I say here, create an event, here, create event. And then over here, you can fill all those things in. So that's how you just connect it to your scenario. So then we click this. And then you see over here that I selected my connection, then also my calendar ID. And then we have the start date of the appointment and the end date. Now this, we're using a function here. So what we did is here we said, okay, we're going to add a few minutes. So we know that the appointment is maybe 30 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, add 30 minutes to, then you go to the star over here. This is where all your variables are. And then we select date and time. And then we say, okay, add 30 minutes to that. And the rest you can just leave empty. So then it's going to search for events between the time that the person chose and the first 30 minutes after. And then we go into our router. The router will split up the scenario. Then here we have a filter that's going to check, okay, am I available? So if the event ID, so this is the event ID that we get back from our Google Calendar module, does not exist, then we know, okay, Google did not find anything in my calendar between those 2 times. Now the other one is exactly the opposite. Unavailable, event ID exists. Because if Google found something in my calendar, then we know that I'm unavailable. Now, when I'm available, then we're going to use a different module. It's called create an event. And this is slightly different from this one. So here we can create an event. So here you can select the modus. Do you just want to do it quickly or into detail? Now then you select your calendar ID and then you set your event name, appointment with full name. And then here custom fields, date and time, add minutes. So then we basically say, okay, the appointment will start at this date and it will end 30 minutes later in the same method that we also did earlier. And then we send a response back. So we send back status is available. And then with response mapping over here, we have our $sign dot status. And then we store that into the multi-field. So multi-field is just a custom field that I created for multi-purpose, basically, that I just want to use for maybe a few seconds. And then we automatically continue to a condition. And inside this condition, we check if the multi-field is available. So if the multi-field is equal to available, then it says perfect, the date and time is still available, and then you can continue the conversation over there. Or if it's unavailable, so multi-field is equal to unavailable, then we say, sorry, that date and time is not available. Please pick another date and time. And then we'll wait for a reply from the user again. And then we just go back to our condition where we check, okay, did that person type something? And then we go into our external request again. And then we basically also have a fallback in case something went wrong. And then we just say, thanks, I will send you a confirmation within 24 hours. And then maybe you want to add an action here that you notify yourself. So we have save publish here. And yeah, that is basically it. So we start our webhook, then we search for events, then we use a router, and then between those modules, here we check, okay, is it available? Is it unavailable? And then we send a response back, and we also created it. So yeah, those were all the examples and also how you set all of this up. I think it's really incredible what you can do with it. You can really unlock a world of cool possibilities. So again, all the examples that I just showed you, you can also download in the description box below. Then I will send them over to you so that you can just import them and change to your own needs. So I hope that this was helpful. If it was, give it a little thumbs up. That really helps me a lot. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, then be sure to subscribe. And if you have any questions about what I just showed you, just leave a comment below and I'll be super happy to help you.